Hi there, my name's Julian. I'm one of the directors of SCOTL. I recently interviewed Roger Hunter. Roger is the manager of people and culture at Adelaide Hills Council. Adelaide Hills Council was recently inspected by SafeWork regarding their psychosocial risk management processes. Roger's been involved in this process, and I asked Roger a series of questions around this. Here is one of the questions I asked Roger and his response. I hope you find this insightful.
I think the interesting aspect I find throughout most of this is where people think, what people think the regulator is going to be looking for compared to what the regulator looks for. And also the opportunity that there is in working with the regulator to pick up on things, because I think the regulator's in a really interesting space where it's able to get the experience from lots and lots of different places and organizations. So if you work with the regulator, you actually have access to a wealth of information that you may only ever get from having gone through that personal experience. And obviously that's far more valuable. So while the regulator would ask us questions about our policies and procedures, there were some of the issues around reporting, and this idea of how you report is a very new thing around the psychosocial hazards. Particularly, I think, because most of us have a work health and safety framework where if there's an incident or a hazard, you want to report that in a way that as many people, almost as many people in the organization know about it so that they're aware of it. One of the things that was really highlighted to me was that when that comes to psychosocial hazards, that's not something that you want. And in fact, if lots of people were suddenly aware of it, it can reduce the likelihood of reports being made. And ironically, it would increase the level of hazard that there are is if lots of people became aware of that incident. So I think that for me was a sudden kind of like aha, both in those two areas, around the fact that the way in which we report it has to be looked at entirely different from the way in which we report physical. The other aspect being the regulator's got a wealth of information that's probably really useful and helpful for other organizations to know about. So the internal reporting processes, they talked about an example of if, let's say, for example, one of your workers is sexually assaulted, and how do they report that? Now, that's not the kind of information that you want anybody to have to report to lots of different people. So normally when we report an injury, it would go to the work health and safety officer, maybe the manager, the people and culture manager, their director, that kind of thing. That is, and you're like, oh yeah, you really don't want that kind of reporting process around these kind of areas, around that. And that, I think, for me is a real, I wouldn't say it's an aha moment, but it's a sudden, oh, this is not just about adding in lots of new things that can be reported. This has to be dealt with and looked at in an entirely different way.